I just went out there and talked to every investor that I could. While the infrastructure aspect of clean technologies is challenging, fall in love with the aspect of what clean energy can provide.
Hello, and welcome to the Sayva Spotlight, a client-focused podcast where we interview founders and executives of some of our most exciting businesses to learn about their industry's value props and what differentiates them from the competition. My name is Johnny Kasayan, and I am the host of the Sayva Spotlight. I am a certified public accountant and the Vice President of Strategic Operations for Sayva Solutions. Today, I am joined by a special guest, Tosh Dutt, a serial entrepreneur in the clean energy space. Tosh is the founder and was the CEO of ChargeNet Stations and has recently started a new venture focused in the Fintech EV charging space. Now, let's kick it back to the studio for our interview with Tosh.
Tosh, thanks for joining us today on the Sayva Spotlight.
Thanks, Johnny. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's get right into it. So how'd you get into the clean energy space?
It was actually by accident. My background has been in more hard tech, silicon photonics, semiconductor manufacturing. And I met my wife in Hawaii, and there's no Silicon Valley in Hawaii. So when we decided to move there were very limited options as to, where I could go. And so there has been a very, Hawaii is such a great place for incubating clean technologies. And I found myself with an opportunity working for a startup that was doing thermal energy solutions, large utility, commercial industrial scale technologies. And that's really how I kind of got my start there. It was kind of out of necessity.
Sure.
But when you get into it, you start to fall in love with the aspect of what clean energy can provide, what it can do to help our planet, So clean energy is so important right now, especially with all the climate change issues that we're facing. And so, being able to be in that industry is so gratifying because there's a purpose about it. And so that purpose just grew for me. And as I got more experience, I can't find myself in any other space.
Yeah, it's just a mission you can get behind. Now, what was your skill set, within this company?
Yeah, so, a lot of my background's been in enterprise business development and sales. I'm very high tech, technical sales. And so I was able to translate that to the clean energy aspect of what we're doing because ultimately, you're selling a solution, you're selling a product, you're selling something that's going to provide a return on investment to investors. And so once I started to understand that aspect of it and the financial aspect, kind of going beyond the technical aspect of, what clean energy does, like, renewables and fuel cells and other technologies, everything started to make sense to me in a way where I could understand the different layers of value that a particular technology could provide or a particular, way of contracting something could, advance that market further a lot quicker.
Sure. So let's hop into ChargeNet, founding of ChargeNet.
Yeah.
That's the big one. So, just for the audience, could you just elaborate on ChargeNet, the concept and how it was co-founded?
Yeah. So ChargeNet is a electric vehicle public fast charging station developer and also software as a service developer. Basically, what ChargeNet does is builds fast charging stations with renewable energy with a focus on the quick serve restaurant market. And the quick serve restaurant market is so important to EV adoption. It's very counterintuitive. But when you look at like where Americans go on a daily basis, over 130 million people every day go to quick serve restaurants to get their breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks. And so when you look at where can you meet people where they're at, that's where you can meet people where they're at. And you also have a customer experience that you can leverage. So, kind of thinking about that and seeing how the EV charging market has evolved and looking at, the other larger charge point operators, the focus was really on let's just deploy as much of these chargers, kind of thoughtlessly as possible. not really worrying about the customer experience. And so now that more and more people are starting to adopt EVs, and you have lower priced EVs that are starting to hit the market, being able to put this infrastructure where people can access it is so important. In addition to the customer experience aspect, where they're just not sitting around idle doing nothing. You can grab a meal, use a clean bathroom, and those things aren't trivial when you look at it. Like having a clean bathroom when you're, on a road trip, or even, just charging up before you're going to work is so important. And looking at the other places where you go to do that, I don't know. I'm not really would be too thrilled to go to a gas station bathroom. So as far as, how it was co-founded, I knew that I had a great idea. I'd done some validation, which is very, very important, talking to other investors and other people in the industry. And so when I decided to move forward with it, I knew that I was going to have someone technical, on the software aspect, that where I really don't have, a dog in the hunt, and also operationally to help support that. And so, kind of looking at that and looking at kind of what my goals were for ChargeNet, focusing on, in addition to, the technology and the business, but also the diversity, equity, and inclusion aspect of it. There are people that I'd come across in my previous roles where, I remembered them, they stood out, and I knew that they would be the right person to do that. And so, when the time came to bring those people on, it made sense, and we're able to work it out. And so without them, ChargeNet would not be where it's at.
Part of the ChargeNet business model, it also allows these quick serve restaurants to offset some of their electricity costs. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Where it makes sense to do solar, that solar can be used to offset that restaurant operators, energy costs, their building load. And also they can benefit from, having the EV charging infrastructure there without having to pay for any of it. And that's the biggest thing. I mean, these are really large, expensive capital projects. Each station's anywhere from $900,000 to over $1 million, depending on where it is and what kind of equipment you're using. And they take a while, and the government's done a lot with the Build Back Better Act and the Inflation Reduction Act to open up the doors and really accelerate the market. But the mechanics of all that, kind of operationally, of how that happens from, a government perspective, from a regulatory and legislative perspective, hasn't quite caught up yet. So everyone's excited about,
Sure.
Public EV charging and more EVs hitting the road and more infrastructure getting into place. But the mechanisms to make that happen, to get from, a paper to, a built operating asset is a really big spread.
Right. We're seeing the difficulties with bureaucracy and just the process there. Now, one of the reasons I love the ChargeNet business model is because it seems like a model where everybody wins. The quick serve restaurant wins, the consumer wins, and then ChargeNet, having, again, the model of, earning fees off the charging ports. Would you agree with that?
It's a little bit a layer deeper, because ChargeNet is unique in the way that the company's been able to finance, bring in institutional investors that invest in, EV, in solar and battery storage, and basically have created a model by which they can now invest in a new asset class, which is EV charging infrastructure. And so, the benefit to the franchisee is beyond just, getting some revenue there. It's also the marketing aspect, increased food sales, and the other parties that also benefit, the financiers are able to invest in a new asset class for, a term where they can really make some good money on that, and also have a huge impact on the environment and fighting climate change. For consumers, the value prop is that they can get charging that is accessible, that's affordable, and that's convenient. So the benefit that everyone gets, everyone benefits. Like you said, it's a win-win-win. But I think it goes beyond that, because what ChargeNet's been able to do very uniquely is get investors to invest in that infrastructure. Because up until now, you would have to raise that money, that equity, to invest in that infrastructure, the chargers, and building it and putting it into place, and then trying to figure out how do you make your money back, right? Where ChargeNet is able to offer, software that ties everything together. It provides the customer experience in the front end and the back end, the ability to manage all those assets and optimize them, but also, help investors get a return on investment on a new asset class whereby they can benefit from, the Inflation Reduction Act and Build Back Better, and get the benefits from that. Where, the burden isn't on, the developer, which is ChargeNet, to try and find a way to, raise money to finance everything.
Sure. So it presents a unique investment opportunity. So you talked about financing. Let's dig deeper into that. You've been in the VC world for a bit by founding these companies, mingling with VCs. How have you approached that? And, maybe you can give some words of wisdom to, some future founders on how they should attack, the VC funding issue.
Yeah, funding is a bit of a black box, right? And you have different investors with different motivations. And so, what I did was I just went out there and talked to every investor that I could and listened to every piece of feedback that I could. 99% of dealing with investors is rejection, maybe even more than that. And so, what I was told, the best advice I got was treat it like a sales process. And, having a sales and business development background, that's something I'm used to. And, I've built a thick skin over the years in terms of hearing no constantly. And that's just part of the deal. But when you do get that feedback and you can shape the message and tell the story to an investor that is cohesive with, their thesis or, what they're trying to invest in, there's magic that happens there. And, there's a lot of opportunity that gets created when you have an investor that says, yeah, this makes sense. Let's take a look at it a bit more. But, the bottom line is just talk to as many investors as possible. And, it's sending hundreds of emails out a day and, hopping on Zoom at 6 a.m. in different parts of the world and, trying to get investors to buy into, to believe in what you're doing.
So it's critical to have, investor alignment with the value prop. And, now with ESG investing becoming a lot more popular and kind of at the forefront of investing, did you feel like you were almost at the ahead of the curve on that in terms of the investors you were looking for?
Yeah, it's funny. I thought I was ahead of the curve, but but when you look at sort of investors that are out of scope, out of the clean tech, renewable energy space, the challenges are around is this hardware, is this software, right? And can you just do the software? Can you just do the hardware? And, the challenge around that, especially as it, relates to clean tech, is you have to have both. And you have to have a business model that allows those technologies to, provide a return on investment. And so there's a lot of education that has to happen. And, you end up talking to a lot of investors with a lot of different myths about what you do in the space. And but certainly, it's gotten the conversation going sort of outside of the sphere where you have a lot more generalist investors, generalist VCs that are making investments in clean tech and are starting to dive into looking at more renewable technologies. So, is really great to get feedback from them because you get that perspective of, from someone that's not an industry, expert. And I'd say that helped me shape, ChargeNet's growth more than some of the investors that, were in the sector and understood what I was doing.
So you mentioned some myths, dispelling some myths, as it pertains to investors. Let's talk about myths of the clean energy sector. What's your take on that?
One of the biggest myths is that clean tech isn't scalable fast. And, and that if you are putting out a solution that incorporates hardware and software, that it's going to take a lot longer to get to market. And, that's one of the biggest myths that I see out there. And that, while the infrastructure aspect of, clean technologies is challenging, it's still possible. And, you have really amazing companies that, ancillary to ChargeNet that have been able to scale up really fast, like Block Power and Charger Help and, some other startups that are killing it right now.
Now, you mentioned at the beginning, you started a new venture. So, post ChargeNet, new venture. Let's talk about that. What do you have going on now?
Yeah. So, over the years, you kind of start to see where the gaps are in the market, and it's not like you can tell the future, but you can kind of see where the tea leaves are going, right? And, one of the aspects that I've faced as an EV driver myself is just public charging is just so expensive. And, if I could have something that was predictable in terms of, knowing what I'm paying, that would be great. And save some money too as well. And I'd even be willing to pay for my EV charging, years for a few years ahead. So this new venture is really exciting, and it's completely the opposite of anything that I've kind of looked at previously. But, when I bought an EV, it would have been great if I could pay for my charging, for the term that I was going to have the car up front and have some sort of predictable pricing. So that's what my new company, Electric Flow Finance, does is, when you go to buy or lease a car and you're in the finance room, they're going to be able to offer a package where, you can buy all for the term that you're leasing or buying your car, charging at public charging stations. And what that does, it gives the new EV drivers a predictable cost that kind of follows their lease payment and their loan payment, and gives them the flexibility of, sticking with a network or being able to go to various different networks, because there's just so many different networks around. And it really takes the guesswork out of how much am I going to pay and where am I going to pay for it, right? So, it's something that I'm pretty excited about, and I'm looking forward to developing further. And, hopefully, in this year sometime, people will be able to go to their dealerships and, when they're buying their EV, be able to pay for charging and where we can lend them the money to do that, and they can have that predictability around the cost of charging and where they're going to charge.
Well, that's fantastic. I mean, bringing any predictability around personal budgeting, it's just so important, especially, in today's day and age. So, I'm sure you decided to start this new venture, but I'm sure you've had plenty of ideas. So when you're going through ideas in the clean tech space, trying to decide what I'm going to do next, how do you determine what's viable and what's, like you said, will just take too long to reach profitability or just be too difficult to pull together? What's your process?
My process is, I wouldn't say I'm great at financial modeling and pro formas. I'm more of a hack, but I can get by. And so, I'll kind of put the mechanics together and whiteboard it and draw arrows and show, okay, that the auto dealer is going to do this and the EV driver is going to get that. And I'm going to lend this. And, the utility is going to, ask me to pay this. Right. And so, I'm looking at all the different mechanics of it and then kind of laying that out in terms of like, well, what does this look like from, a financial aspect and how do I model that out? And then that's where I kind of look at the scalability and I look at like, okay, well, what are other people doing? Right. And where are those gaps? And, having been in the industry for a while, it's not that some are more glaring than others. This one wasn't that super glaring, but I know it just makes sense. It's a bit of, it's a bit of the brain and the gut kind of coming together, and then, kind of working through that validation and making sure that you have everyone that you're talking to poking holes in what you're doing. I ask people, investors, like, hey, please poke holes in this. I want to know where the leaks are so that I can plug them up so that this can float, right?
Absolutely. So let's pivot to personal life. I know that it's not all just work. You're married, you have 2 kids. And, when you're not, working again in the clean tech space or founding a company, what are you doing?
Yeah, so I have some, I'd say most would consider extreme sports. I've been racing motorcycles since I was in my mid-20s. And so anytime, I have a day or a weekend, I love going to the track and suiting up and hopping on the bike and taking some laps. For me, it's meditative. Time slows down for me. But other than that, my kids are super into sports. My son is 14, about to start high school. He plays football, rugby, jiu-jitsu, baseball. And then, my daughter's super into horseback riding. And so, between all of that, there's very little time. But what's great about this is that, they give me the time that I need to get what I need to get done. And there's that flexibility and understanding there that, this has to get done, right? And so, my struggle has been prioritizing, do I do this or do I do that? And a lot of times it's a lot easier to prioritize when I have something blocked off on the schedule. So, schedules are great. They really help out managing time and making sure that I'm putting as much into my family as I am into my work.
Absolutely. And I'm sure, like most of us, the more balance we have, the better our work becomes, right? Mm-hmm. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. And so I've learned over the last couple of years that the better I can manage all of those things, you kind of do everything better. Has that been your experience as well?
Yeah. For me, it's really important to stay centered. I've been meditating for a long time. I have my own little things that I do to keep myself centered. And, when I'm not centered, those things bring me back. And I'm lucky enough to have people to say, like, hey, you're off your square right now. You need to do this to get back on your square. So, accountability is so important for me in ensuring that, I'm staying on the beam.
All right. Well, let's hop in to some San Diego questions. So we're Sayva Solutions, San Diego company. Tosh, you're a San Diego guy. We need to do some San Diego things here. So I'm going to give you a couple rapid fire topics. I need the first thing that comes to mind. All right.
Okay.
So favorite taco shop?
Roberto's.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's they're everywhere, and it's so authentic to San Diego, and
you can't go wrong.
You can't go wrong,
Love that. All right. Bar or restaurant?
Modern Times. I love Modern Times. I'm plant-based, vegan. They have this really great, bar menu. That's awesome. I don't drink alcohol, but I go there for the food. So
great. How about this? This one might be controversial. Beach.
Ooh, so I live in Cardiff. Yeah. So for me, it's San Elijo and Moonlight and Swami's. I'd say Swami's is the best beach. That's my favorite.
It's beautiful down there. You can't go wrong with any of those.
No, you can't.
All right. Hike. You do hiking trails.
Oh, I love hiking. Yeah. My favorite is Potato Chip.
Oh, yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's all uphill all the way.
that one's, that's a calf burner.
Yeah.
All right, last one. I know you have kids, family. Where's your go-to spot, when you just need to go to your happy place with the family? Where do you guys go in San Diego?
Bueno Forchetta. That's our family's favorite spot to go to. That's our family dinner place. It used to be California Pizza Kitchen, but our kids have grown up and evolved a bit more. So, yeah, Bueno Forchetta is our spot.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah, Bueno Forchetta is fantastic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, look, this has been great. I appreciate, you taking the time to chat with us today. We have one final question. What can we expect from your new venture in 2023?
That's a great question. We're just building this up right now, and the goal is to get to market by the end of the year. So, I'd say we're going to be heads down pretty much this year. Really focused on building the product and the business, and getting some loans out there, some loans funded, and testing out how it works.
It's really exciting. Best of luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Johnny. This is great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate your time. This podcast is sponsored by Sayva Solutions. Sayva Solutions supports and elevates businesses through every phase of growth by infusing strategic consulting expertise and world-class back-office support when and wherever needed. We provide outsourced finance, accounting, and HR support for early-stage to medium-sized businesses, along with recruiting and special project consulting for large and enterprise-level businesses. We have a solution for every stage of growth. Visit sayvasolutions.com for details, SAYVA solutions.com.